so much for coming to our Goldilocks Suit pilot launch event. And welcome to everyone who's joining us online on Zoom. It's really great to have you with us, and it's really great that everyone here came out in the middle of their week to support us. We really, really appreciate it. Also, a big thank you to Stone and Chalk and their talented team for hosting us and supporting the event. We really appreciate having access to this very beautiful space. We've got 4 speakers tonight, and I'll introduce them one by one as they come up. Our first speaker is Robert, and he's the Executive Director at the Commission on Excellence and Innovation in Health.
So honestly, kind of thanks for having me. And if we sort of look at the list of sort of panel speakers, it's sort of ironic. I got the list sort of, I think, late last week. So we have 2 of the sort of the preeminent sort of health tech innovators across South Australia. We've got Shem, who's a biomedical engineer and kind of has an interesting startup. Then we have a random American idiot who works for the state government. And so that's sort of me. And like I said, I'm the Executive Director of Clinical Innovation for the Commission on Excellence, Innovation in Health. So our job, our role is to sort of kind of work across the South Australian health ecosystem to drive and create better healthcare for all South Australians. And as a government employee, I have to do something different tonight than I have to do at most of these. I have to declare a potential conflict of interest because not only am I here representing CIH, I'm also an investor in Goldilocks. And it's not a lot. I won't say how much it is. But let's just say when I actually did the investment, I got an email from Shem that said, thanks, I guess. And so let's just say this. So if Shem becomes the Elon Musk of infant wearables, I stand to profit dozens and dozens of dollars. So I have that going for me. So it's a super exciting time. My wife is really counting on that, but super excited. So one of the reasons I did, it's like I said, that's not something I do all the time. I think it really represents probably the intersection of 2 really interesting trends within sort of health tech and digital health. Because when most people inside the health system think of digital health, they think of what they've invested literally sort of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in. That's getting really good at collecting data on the patient when they're really sick inside the hospital. And that's what they think of digital health, and that's where they've invested their money, literally billions and billions of dollars on. But interesting trend that's gone on in the last kind of 15 or 20 years was that it's before, the downside of that is that even the sickest patients we know a lot of, they only spend a fraction of their time in the hospital. So 95% of what we know about that sick patient, we only know for the 5 or sort of 10% of the time they're in the hospital. And even when we get really good at it, there's really fantastic sort of health tech companies just in South Australia, like Alcidion, who's getting really good at being able to predict when a patient is going from very sick to really, really sick and getting sort of better at that. But we don't know as a health ecosystem, we don't know what happens to that patient when they're a pre-patient, when they're outside of the hospital. We don't know how they got from well to kind of sick to sick enough to go to the hospital. So very little insight to what's going on in terms of kind of what's going on upstream. So it's really easy to think about sort of kind of this children's wearables just as sort of a wearables, really cool tech. But to me, I think it represents a really amazing trend where we kind of have seen in the past where 95% of what we know about sort of patients, we know in terms of what happens inside the hospital. And I think that's about to flip. The next kind of 10 or 15 years, it's going to be where it used to be 95% of kind of the data collected by the patients. It's within the hospital really soon, and it's less than 5 years, less than 10 years. It's 95% of what we know about that patients being collected outside of the hospital. The other thing that's really interesting is that in terms of it's also sort of not just about sort of the tech and kind of where we're collecting it, but it's also about sort of who owns it. If we think about sort of digital health and kind of data, typically when we talk about sort of patient data, if the patient's really fantastic, if the health system deems them sort of privileged enough, then the health system will share some of that patient's own data about that patient, about the patient. And that's about to flip as well. So the trend in the past had been the hospital owns the patient data, the health system owns the patient data. And what's great about Goldilocks isn't that we're learning more about sort of the pre-patient, what happens sort of beforehand. It's also owned by the people who should own it, which is sort of the patient. And to me, it's transformational, potentially transformational in a couple different ways. Whereas if we get to the hospital where it's a baby or it's a kind of a full-grown adult, we're getting snapshotted information. We know they might have a temperature. We know their sort of blood pressure might be increased. We don't know if they've had a temperature for 2 hours. We don't know if the temperature spiked from, I'm an American, so from 98.6 to 103 over the last kind of 15 minutes. With tech like this, we have a lot more insight and sort of kind of full spectrum and lifespan of sort of what's going on in the patient, better diagnosis, fewer hospital admissions, sort of better outcomes. So it's really exciting, not just from sort of infant wearables perspective, as well as sort of being on the cutting edge of where sort of digital health is going, where it has been going in the last 10 years, which is, again, delivering better healthcare outside the hospital and getting more and more insight to what's going on before the patient gets really sick, before that person gets really sick. So it's incredibly exciting to see that. I'm really excited to see what's going on, not just in terms of the pilot event tonight, but in terms of the application kind of after this and the data we're going to get out of it and sort of better healthcare and better outcomes we're going to get out of it. So thanks for having me. We're really excited to see what's going on, and it's a kind of really exciting time for Goldilocks. Thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. Oh, lucky this is at the right height. That never happens. Crazy. No. Thanks for everyone for coming today. I think this is a really special time for the Goldilocks team and finally getting to kind of launch after a couple of years of really hard work. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Precigen. We're an AI healthcare company. We've got a really unique platform that allows us to connect to clinics globally and collect data in order to build AI products. And actually, my connection to this sort of space comes both from a business and a personal perspective. We've got our first product in the fertility sector that is called Life Whisperer and uses AI to assess embryos in order to improve IVF outcomes for infertile patients. But I think one of our interests as a company and also personally in the femtech sector is kind of following that journey right from sort of conception all the way through to birth and development of the child all the way through to growth and other health issues that happen later in life. So I think it's a really interesting time for technologies like Goldilocks Suit in the consumer wearables space. I think the adoption of digital technologies is advancing significantly. And, you know, I know from my own experience, I have my children with Fitbits on, constantly monitoring, and we've got the ability now to track all sorts of different metrics for our children. And what an amazing thing to be able to do to get an insight into your child's issues during sleep or monitoring of their potential issues to help guide your decisions for them. So I think it's amazing technology. Super excited to be involved. I've been involved with the company for a couple of years now. I've known Shem for a while. Really hardworking, amazing idea. And I think for would-be parents, just taking away some of that stress around, monitoring of their child particularly during those nighttime periods is completely invaluable. And it's going to be an amazing success. I think there's going to be a lot of parents that are going to want this technology and take away the kind of in-room monitoring and do on-person monitoring it's going to be amazing. So thanks for involving me and considering my advice valuable. And I look forward to growing with the team. Thanks for coming.
I look like a fool having a slide deck considering everybody's speaking without one, but I think Shem fooled me into thinking that I need a slide deck, so that's his fault. Now that I've got one, maybe let me use it. So my background is not health. I come from a business design background. That's the example of one of the good design awards I won for business design globally. And my experience is like looking at startups and organizations from an angle of business model. What is that people are trying to do in terms of value creation? I'm the CEO of GP Partners, and we've been talking to Shem about how this fits into this. And one of the things that we do at GP Partners is work with GPs to train them to work on obstetrics. So we work with 660 GPs and 460 clinics in Adelaide to train them to support women who want to have babies but not actually go to the hospital, can go to their GP. So about 15% of the South Australian population every year is born through our program. So we have a very deep understanding of how obstetrics runs, what are the challenges of women. So our team's been kind of giving some guidance to Shem and what it is, but we actually see that, to Robert's point, people don't know what's happening when it happens at their, to their children or to themselves, and they can't go to the doctor all the time. So this kind of the larger thing that we are seeing is actually the trend that's been happening for a few years, where there's a combination of health, patients, and technology. So when we talk about patient-centeredness, I think it's really technology that is making patient-centeredness and not actually organizations. So, but the challenge in health, which is very unique, is, Anderson Horowitz guys would say that software is eating the world, but in health, actually, software is still not eating the world. And we still get faxes from RH to the GPs. So we're still trying to figure out what is that way that we can actually influence software. And part of the challenge for software is business model and go-to-market. And I think what Shem and his wife are trying to do is actually extraordinary, but it still comes down to those two questions. How do we price it? How do we charge it? And how do we sell it? Like, how does it go through the market? And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for anybody in healthcare. So irrespective of how great our product is, unless we understand the go-to-market strategy and we actually have a way to create value, we'll continue to kind of struggle through the process. But what we're seeing with what Michelle's doing and what everybody's doing around here is trying to kind of break that and show how we can actually create global startups from Adelaide. And I think that's kind of the beacon that we have to follow, but very conscious of the challenge. One of the top reasons that startups don't succeed is because there's no market need. And we all focus on products, but actually what we should be focusing on is customers. At least in the case of Shem and their wife, they've been their own customers, so it's kind of helpful. You can test on yourself. But in generally, that's the biggest challenge. It's not technology, it's not anything else. It's like nobody wants to buy your product. And I think it's very important that as we build out new innovations or startups, we kind of look and focus on that. How do we enable and understand market need? And one of the biggest trends is like digital health itself is a $1.8 billion market. And this is not a small, that's just Australia, $200 billion globally. So what Goldilocks is actually entering is a very, very big and one of the fastest growing markets in health. I found this report from And Health. Okay. They have been investing in about 300 startups, and this is what they found on digital health. 37% of this digital health products are used in home, like Goldilocks. 27% go through GP or allied health, and 29% is also on self-management. So this goes back to the point Robert is making, is that actually most of digital health is actually about enabling us as individuals and patients and participants to kind of manage our own health. And this is a very, very interesting space where we're really trying to give more capability to ourselves to make our own decisions, but using data and not some intuition or Dr. Google. We're actually using data. And I think that's where I think the variables are going to be really, really critical in helping us through this process. Finally, and Shem has been kind enough to kind of give me the opportunity, is I want to talk about what we've been doing for the last year, which is kind of actually fits nicely with what Shem or Sam is trying to do. We were trying to figure out a way to create value with a GP network, and we've kind of launched a platform-based model to do clinical trials. We see that a lot of these digital health startups, medical devices, and drug companies wants to do clinical trials, at least starting with Australia and South Australia, but how do they go about doing it? So we want to create a platform where it becomes super easy for people to plug and play and actually run clinical trials or any kind of trial for validation. Again, going back, I think digital health is quite different from the other clinical trials. We actually don't need a clinical trial. Most of the people who may buy Shem's product may actually don't even want to think about a randomized clinical trial, but they want to see some evidence. They want to see that it actually works. How do people feel? What is the experience of using it? And I think those are the kind of opportunities that we can see to do that there. I just want to close lastly, and if anybody's in the room would love to support you guys, is we've already built the South Australia's largest clinical trial network. And we really want to help any digital health startups here who wants to kind of go to market, look at commercial evidence, look at clinical evidence, and see how you can actually start getting that data so you can start to show to your future investors or your customers. So on that note, thank you, and good luck with everything, Shem and
mic's way too tall for me. But I think, thanks everyone for coming out. But what I really like about that video is it almost tells two stories, doesn't it? You've got your ultra high tech, you know, Apple kind of looking device. And then you've got your very traditional family values of confidence, carefree, working outside. And those two things really marry up what we're trying to do at Goldilocks Suit. We're trying to take cutting edge technology built into the singlet. So if you look at these singlets we have here, we have screen printed on the inside of them. Sensors to detect how your baby's coping and feeling. But at the same time, you know, we're not about technology. We wouldn't call ourselves a technology company. What we're really about is creating confident parents, creating happy parents and creating calm parents. Because when you look over the space of time, you know, research, even intuition tells you that calm, confident, happy parents have the best outcomes for their families. And that's really what Goldilocks is about, creating calm, confident and happy parents. So you might wonder, well, you know, you've got this latest technology. How does that kind of fit in with trying to make calm, confident parents? Well, there's three main stresses that cause the most amount of stress in parents. And the first is changing family structures. We can't really do too much about that. You know, you're going to have to put up with how your family changes and there's a new person in your life and that just happens. The second major stress that happens to parents occurs because of sleep deprivation. And, you know, we'll help you get to the answer as quick as we can and we'll help you get to the right answer more often than not, but you're still going to have to get up in the morning. Babies don't know what's day, babies don't know what's night. We're not going to solve that completely for you. We might be able to help a little bit. But the third main stress is the perception of the baby's temperament. And that's really what we're targeting with Goldilocks Suit. Parents don't really know, particularly first-time parents, don't really know what's normal for their baby. They don't understand, is that temperature normal? Is that temperature not normal? Do they normally wake 5 times? Do they normally wake 10 times? Why is my baby acting like this? And that's really what we're targeting with Goldilocks Suit and how we're trying to create more confident and happy parents. So the technology we're using, as we've said, if you haven't seen it before and didn't get it in the video, we have the sensors screen printed on the inside of the singlet to detect things like temperature. So that will pick up core and skin temperature. And then we have a little pocket on the outside where the module goes into, and the module slips in there, and that also has sensors picking up things like motion and also connecting the temperature sensors. And then that then communicates with your phone to talk to your app. So what does the app tell you? Well, if we look at our screen up here, it's not on a baby, so it's saying it's low temperature at the moment. But what we're really looking at helping parents understand is the feeding habits of the baby. So we can track when you stop and start feeding, and then we can look at your history to say, well, you know, they fed 3 hours, we're coming to 3 hours, they normally feed now. So if they're crying now, it's probably because they're due for a feed or they're hungry. We look at sleep patterns as well. So we track when they start and finish sleeping, and then look at the history, and our algorithms work out when they would normally sleep, when they would normally wake up. So, you know, if your baby wakes up half an hour earlier than normal, and they start crying half an hour before they normally go down, it will say they're probably sleepy, and that's what they're working on. We're also looking at things like breathing. So this is your typical SIDS device that most parents are worried about. And then we also look at the temperature. So we're looking at your core temperature and your skin temperature as well. And the reason we do that is because core temperature tells us if the baby's hot or not, but skin temperature as well tells us if the room's the right temperature as well. So the main things we're really targeting is the feeding, sleep, and temperature to give that. So what happens if you go into it? Well, if I go into temperature, we have kind of the temperature tracked, and it gives it in a fairly visual format of just, it's green, it's fine, you don't need to worry about it. And that's kind of what it does in the front screen as well. When you, we also We also, at the bottom, have videos that are made by clinicians as well. So we don't kind of just say to you, hey, your baby's hot, you need to kind of do something about it. We say, hey, your baby's hot, here's a video from a clinician which talks about how to solve it. Here's a simple checklist that you can go through about how you can solve it and how you can get through it. So we kind of close the loop in that respect as well, to try and give parents the most help and advice that they can to work out what's normal and what's not normal. So where are we up to? Well, this year we built our commercially ready product, which is ready to sell and has all been independently verified and tested as well. We also ran a pilot trial with our version 3 prototype on 20 parents to collect more information, validate the sensors, and further improve our algorithms. We raised 100K through crowdfunding earlier this year. We also finished up as an alumni of the MedTech Actuator, who really supported us to give us support around what's medical, what's consumer health, and how to get around the regulations, and brought on considerable funding along with Artesian as well. And we also won the SA Northern Territory Startup of the Year as well, which was, nice validation for the team as well, which is also exciting. But obviously we would never get there. We wouldn't have had a successful year without all the help that everyone here has brought. So really like to thank particularly my family and the beautiful girls at the back, who you've probably heard if you haven't seen. They've kind of been with us and been that genesis for our idea as well. And, really blessed, and thank God every day for their support as well. Also really like to thank ThinkLab. They had to leave early, but they really believed in us on the early days and really supported us, and we wouldn't be here without kind of their support along the way. So we're really thankful for everything they bring as well. Also, we had a number of investors that have invested in us, including Artesian, including all the guys in the crowdfunding as well. And we certainly wouldn't be where we are without your support and help. So that's incredibly thankful for all the support that we have got along the year. We're also pretty thankful for our advisory as well. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Brian, for all your support that you've given us through the years, and certainly made it easier to make decisions when someone's already done it before. They can tell you what works, what doesn't work, and that's really helped us as well. Also really like to thank our manufacturers, product developers, clinicians, and supporters that we've just generally had along the way. A startup or a child is raised by a village, and really that's the same as a startup. I come up and say, we've done all this work, being a complete fraud, because it just wasn't all me at all. And there's so many other people around me that have supported me along the journey as well. Particularly like to thank as well the team that we've had. Johnny has done an amazing job. He started last month and pulled this together, and he's our community manager. Elodie looks after our relationships with clinicians as well, supports that. And Jamin, who lives in Wellington, so couldn't make it at the moment, he kind of looks after our business side of things and investment and finance and strategy behind it as well. So particularly thankful for all the work that they've done over the last few years to make, Goldilocks a overnight success that's been running for 3-4 years or whatever it has been. So where to from now? Well, next week we've developed 50 to 100 units. So next week we're selling them to the patients, and we'll have some clinicians and charities help us kind of distribute them as well, so we can collect data, get even more feedback than what we already have. We're looking to close up a seed round midway through next year to bring on further investment to grow the marketing and build out the team as well. So we make the most of the market demand that we believe is there. We've also got a full commercial launch that we're looking to do February, March as well, where we're not releasing 50 to 100 units, we're doing thousands of units then as well. We've also got a lot of work to do with refining the sensors, improving our algorithms, making it more accurate, making it better for parents to use and more user-friendly as well. So we're doing a lot of work in that in the following year to bring out further features and build up our intellectual property portfolio as well. And, you know, babies, smart clothes is kind of one vertical that we're looking at as well. And we looked at that because that's where our domain expertise is in. But there's lots of areas that this can be used as well. Think aged care, think residential living, think pets, that, you know, their carers are always looking for some sort of feedback on how their, you know, patient is doing. So that's, you know, we're doing a lot of research into those avenues about how we can improve and diversify our business as well. But also really like to thank our speakers. Thank you everyone for coming along as well, and thank you for all the support that you've shown us over the years. You know, we're here to kind of help the future, you know, of your kids, your grandkids, really the future of Australia, and we're grateful to have you on the journey. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks, Shem. You heard it here first. Goldilocks is here for the future of Australia. That's our goal, to support the future of Australia. So thanks for being part of the first step. And yeah, as Shem said, thank you once again to all our speakers who've given up their time tonight to be with us, to share their thoughts on the space and to share their support and their knowledge along the way as well. My name is Johnny, as Shem said, and I'm the most recent addition to the Goldilocks team as a community manager. You'll be seeing a little bit more, hearing a little bit more from me, from the team over the next few months as we build up towards our commercial launch. And we'd love to hear from you. If not tonight, then over social media. Send us an email, send us your thoughts. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the suit, if someone else that you know would like to know a bit more about something that we can offer, then please send them our way. It all really helps us out, and we'd love to connect with you